Welcome to Straight from the Muzzle, folks, where we are anything but straight. My name is Space.
And I'm Sparrow.
And we welcome you to our episode, which is about what today?
Today, we are going to be talking about fursuit pricing.
Which is, this is kind of more or less a Sparrow episode because you're the dominant.
I mean, so here's the great thing about this combo is that I'm a fursuit maker and you're a fursuiter, so like the customer, so we can have both sides to this because we decided to talk about this a while ago, and we're a little bit late on the train because it was a trend sometime last month on Twitter, people arguing, how do you price fursuits? What's worth it? What's not? Is that even a valid statement? Because everything is so subjective when it comes to art as a whole.
Yep.
And it was just some huge discussion on Twitter for a while, and it's died down now. But if anything, I think it's good that we're covering it after it's died down a bit because we don't want our own biases to get in the way, of our conversation. So we've had some time to mull over it, to discuss it, and we just kind of want to explore it some more.
Yeah, and then even if we were to do it in the heat of the moment, it would still be good. It would just be kind of like, okay.
We don't want anybody to feel like they're called out either.
No.
Not for something like fursuit pricing.
So let's talk about understanding what a fursuit is.
Everybody has the dummy definition of a fursuit, like the, oh, no, duh, this is what it is, which is generally just a custom-made anthropomorphic animal costume that people wear for various reasons. You might wear it for your own entertainment. You might wear it to socialize at conventions. You might wear it for sexual reasons. You might wear it to do charity work. Like, there is thousands of different reasons why you might wear a fursuit, but that is the general definition. It's just a custom costume that you wear.
Right, and the other thing too is think of it as a mascot costume that you see at football games. They're all basically the same thing, except the one thing is that those are pre-made, and no, I guess they're custom.
Factory made.
They're factory made, yeah.
Sometimes they're custom made if the team has the budget
by tiny
for it.
Hands.
Yeah,
but yeah. What about the second understanding of it?
So that's the basic definition, but there's something further with fursuits that I feel like people don't consider as often. And it's the fact that a fursuit is also a wearable, performative, one-of-a-kind piece of art. So just like how you might commission a painter to paint something grand for your home or for a gallery, a fursuit is very similar to that. It's one of a kind. It's customized. You commission it oftentimes or you buy a pre-made. Either way, but it is a one-of-a-kind piece of art. It's not just a costume. I feel like so many people just view it as a costume because we're desensitized to fursuits at this point. We see them so frequently, whether it's online or at conventions, that we just start to see it as a costume, in which it is that in its basic form, but it's also an art piece. And that's something that I feel like a lot of people have forgotten about.
There is one more thing I wanted to add, is that a fursuit also is a gateway to another, I guess you could say, perspective for yourself. So a lot of people are nervous outside, they don't know how to interact with people, but it's something magical that as soon as you put it on yourself, you're just totally a different person, and you don't have to worry about those who are judging you, because truly no one really judges a fursuit. There are lots of them out there. There are some really obvious beginner ones, but the feeling stays the same, is that you feel like you're on top of the world and that it's something that you can do that you can't do outside of a fursuit.
Yeah, and I think that's where the performative part comes in, because when you perform, it's not just to entertain others or to entertain yourself. Performative can go into a lot of things. Like, if we think outside of fursuits, you have your performative gender or your performative sex. That is the way you present yourself when it comes to gender norms. That's technically a performative. That is a performance. So when you go into something as personal as gender, you can also think of fursuits in a similar way. If it's a performative art piece, you are wearing this costume, this art piece, in order to express yourself in one way or another, whether it's a way that you don't commonly explore on your own in your day-to-day, or whether it's something you unintentionally do. Maybe you didn't think of it that way. Maybe you bought a fursuit just because you wanted one, but then once you put it on, you start to learn more about yourself, whether it's how you want to be socially or how you want to express yourself mentally. It can be connected in that way, which is the real magic behind a fursuit, honestly.
Yeah. Wait, what did I meant to say you're right. Yikes. It's funny. So I talked to my therapist the other day about like how I slur all my words together, and they're like, "Let's try meditating," and I'm like, "That's great, but it's not going to like fix what's going on in the head."
You should have been like, "Let's try speech therapy."
Yeah,
what?
Like there's obviously some misconnections in there. Hello.
That's funny.
So when it comes to fursuits, there's this thing called the pyramid rule. Are we okay to move on to this?
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Why? Did you have something else you wanted to say?
Nope. We've talked about the pyramid rule before, and I'm sure our consistent listeners are probably like, "Oh, this again." But hey, listen, it's important.
I mean, technically they are viewers because they're watching their screen as they listen. I don't know what you're watching.
Well, I don't know. I drive when I listen to podcasts.
True. I listen to podcasts when I'm bored. That's what I do. That or I watch a movie. Okay, so I'm going to have to just laugh through this.
Good, ma'am.
For you all, this is the third time I'm trying this. So you know. Okay, so there's something called the pyramid rule. Now, a lot of our avid listeners will know what the pyramid rule is, and you're going to be like, oh my God, not the pyramid rule again. But for all of our new listeners, you probably don't know what the pyramid rule is. And the cool thing about this is you can apply it to anything in life. It just really depends on what you want to do it with. But in this particular case, we're going to apply it to fursuits because it's actually really good in this particular case. So the rules are each side has a different description. So you have cheap, fast, and good. And you have to apply this in 3 different ways. You can get a fursuit that's cheap and fast, but the quality is not going to be good. You can get a fast and good fursuit, but it's not going to be cheap. Or you can get a good and cheap fursuit, but it's not going to be fast. So it really depends on how you want to apply this to a fursuit. Just remember, when you go to buy a fursuit, use the pyramid rule first and really determine if this is what you want.
Absolutely. Honestly, it might be helpful for fursuit makers to kind of identify how they are on the pyramid scheme. And I know people aren't going to want to admit that they're cheap and they're fast, right? But but when it comes to the other 2 things, like making it clear in your FAQ, like, hey, by the way, like my wait times can be up to 2 years or what have you, but just make sure your prices reflect that. I know my own customers have been very, very patient with me.
And vocal.
And what?
Vocal.
Well, yeah, we communicate a good bit. And it's like, I would say that I'm on the good and cheap, but not fast side of things because my fursuit prices are very reasonable for the quality that I produce. But ever since teaching, I've had to be a lot slower because it's such a demanding job. And it doesn't mean I'm not working, but it does mean that I have to work at a slower pace because I have so many other responsibilities.
Sparrow made my fursuit. I have not officially debuted it yet, but I will be debuting it at BLFC.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking about the pyramid rule. It would be really interesting if someone actually made like a list, kind of like the reviews that we did before, but they used the pyramid rule against each fursuit maker to kind of give you a better idea as to how you want to shop. Personally, we're not going to do that because we don't want people to hate us. So we'll leave that to someone else.
It might be a good idea on like fursuit reviews to have an image of the pyramid scheme and to circle 2 out of 3. Like in your experience as the customer, what were the top 2 priorities when you were commissioning this person?
Yeah.
Did you get your fursuit fast and was it good quality? Did you get a good fursuit and it was cheap but it wasn't fast? Like just as a customer review to see, that would be interesting.
It would be.
Because then a fursuit maker wouldn't have to label themselves necessarily. And it can also depend on the suit. You might be working on one particular project and a lot of mess ups happen. Shit happens and you have to restart. I know with the current commission I have, it's like a pink dragon with little icing markings. So cute. It's really complex. And the head base took me 2 tries. So you never know. Right. You might have to restart sometimes, and then that makes you not fast. So it just happens. So we've talked about the pyramid idea, our pyramid theory, and we've defined what a fursuit is in multiple ways. Now we need to look at what goes into making a fursuit. And there are different aspects to this, but the first thing that everybody always thinks of is what are the materials that go into making a fursuit? How much do they cost? Because whether you're commissioning a fursuit maker or whether you're trying to make your own, you're going to be curious as to how much the materials cost on their own. Because if you're making your own, you have to know so you can budget it in and gradually buy everything you need. And if you're a fursuit maker, then you have to know how much each costume is going to cost to make so you can calculate how much you need to charge. So it's a really important question to be asking yourself, whether you're the maker or whether you're the customer.
Right.
And I have a list, right? And this, just as a heads up, this is a very generalized list. These numbers are not going to be exact. This is just in my general experience. And there are other comprehensive lists out there on Twitter and in Google about, how much does it cost to make a basic fursuit, things like that.
And then something to also consider too, because of what's going on currently, even though this episode will air in April, it still applies and it probably will apply for a long time. There's a lot of inflation going on in the United States along with the rest of the world. And so it's probably a good thing to kind of put that into perspective, because like a fursuit maker may be able to say, oh, well, it only cost me about $30 a yard. But in then a month or two, you could probably see that price of the fursuit go up. And that would probably be the reason why, is because supplies have gone up as well. So keep that in mind.
And with fur specifically, let's start with fur, because on average, and this is, again, just the average, it's about $30 a yard for good quality luxury shag fur. And that's only one type of fur.
Let's shag.
Shut the fuck up. That's only one type of fur. There are a dozen types of fur out there. You have beaver fur, you have luxury shag fur, you have minky, there's just a ton. But on average, it's about $30. And that's for the general type. I think Big Z Fabrics is the only company that sells it for $25 a yard. And when I first started making fursuits 12 years ago, it was only $15 a yard.
Wow, so it's significantly gone up.
It's significantly gone up, and it's expected to go up more because Shannon Fur Fabrics, which is the primary manufacturer for luxury shag fur, which is what I would say 90% of fursuits are made out of, is discontinuing that type of fur.
Oh, wow.
There are other companies out there like Big Z and How Fabrics who are attempting to manufacture their own. So hopefully that won't be an issue overall. But that means fur prices are going to go up because it costs more to manufacture your own. So do keep that in mind. That is a very good point, Space. Keep inflation in mind. So I might say $30 a yard on average now, but a year from now it could go up to $50. Who knows?
I have to wonder real quick about like places that you get the fur at. I wonder if like you see in most places where you get like, let's say, a product and it's made by Zing Zang or whatever, and then you go to get another price and it's made by Zing Zing. It makes me wonder if there are furs websites out there that operate as the same company, but they play it out as two different names. And the prices only vary by a couple of dollars.
Yes. I know fabric.com also has a shop on Amazon under a different name, and their prices vary a little bit.
That's lame. That's how they take advantage. Do your homework when doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll say fur and foam are going to cost the most when it comes to upfront costs. So again, $30 a yard on average for fur. Let's say all of these numbers I'm pulling are for a basic, simple designed plantigrade full suit. All right, so let's consider it's just like a black and white wolf or something, basic markings. So you're going to need probably about 5 yards of fur. And just doing the math there and then add on shipping, it could be a lot. And then you have your foam. If you have digigrade, it'll cost more for foam. If you have plantigrade, it'll cost less. But foam can vary as well. It's on average about $20 to $40 a yard, depending on the density that you buy. And when you think of yardage on foam, it's different than fabric. So you have your fabric and it has a certain width and a certain length per yard. If you look at a yard of fabric versus a yard of foam, the foam's width is about half. So a yard of foam is less. You get less material than you do a yard of fabric. So you have to think about that. You probably have to double your foam yardage in order to make a fursuit with more detail. So about $20 to $40 a yard, you're going to need multiple yards for, fursuit feet, whether you use foam for hands or whether you use polyfill. It depends on how you build your fursuit. But you probably will spend at least $100, if not more than that, on foam alone. Then you have your various textiles. Textiles are other fabric types. So you'll be using fleece, you'll be using minky, felt. Lycra is really expensive. Lycra is what you line fursuit parts with. Can replace this with cotton, but it doesn't last as much. It can fray really easily. And then, of course, polyfill. That's what you stuff projects with. So things like fingers, toes, tails, digigrade legs. And all of these various textiles will probably also cost you a minimum of around $100 plus, depending on, again, how you want to line your suit, if you want to line certain parts at all, how much stuffing you'll need, what have you. But if we're talking about just a basic planter grade suit, $100 is probably going to be average. Then you have your little bitty stuff that you don't, think about often. Things like adhesive, threads, pattern making supplies. Hot glue alone costs about $5 to $10 per bag. $5 for the cheap stuff, $10 for the Gorilla Glue, just depending. And you will need at least a bag and a half per project. You also have your super glues, things like E6000 or Barge. This can be $5 plus, depending on what brand you use.
Why is hot glue so expensive? Can I just ask?
I don't know. It's a type of rubber, so maybe the way they manufacture it is, expensive. It's also pretty dense.
True, but it's almost like the same process as those 3D pens that you use to build really awful looking objects. But that stuff is cheap. The refills for that is cheap. But then hot glue is super expensive.
I think because it has a very specific melting point and things like that. To manufacture it, it's probably also tricky. I have no idea, but I use the Gorilla Glue brand for most things. I only use the cheaper stuff for low temp, what have you, but it adds up. Then thread. Thread is more expensive than you think. Cotton thread that you use for your machine is probably going to be about $3.50 per spool. And you're going to go through for a full suit, probably 4 of these suckers. And then for upholstery thread for anything you're hand sewing, it's about $5 a spool. So thread will add up too. And then of course, duct tape. Duct tape is super expensive for how much you need. If you are making a duct tape dummy of your body, and then you also need to duct tape pattern over that, you're essentially making 2 duct tape dummies. Because once you make the dummy, you also have to pattern over the dummy, which is just double. And then you have to use duct tape for patterning your heads, your hands, your feet, everything. I can go through 5 Costco rolls for a Digigrade full suit. Planter grade, you'll use a little less, but it is a lot. And just for a basic project, you're probably going to spend $20 on duct tape alone. And you don't think about that because most people are just a duct tape, you get a roll, it's $4 or $5, whatever, but you're using so much of it on these projects.
Now, keep in mind, there are multiple different versions of duct tape. Just keep in mind that just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's going to be good for creating certain things, because there are duct tapes that are $2, but they are shit.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that
you
is actually...
unroll it, and then part of the thread on the side starts to unroll. It's no! Or you get ones that you go to pull the tape and it rips instantly. It's I effing hate you. But you'll get a good one that looks really good, but it's, again, cheap and it doesn't stick to anything.
Costco has the best duct tape, in my opinion. If I can't get Costco brand, then I get duct tape brand with a little ducky on it. That's the one that works best for me. And that is very true. I'm glad you brought that up, because you can cheap out on duct tape. Instead of spending $20 on a project, you can spend $10, but you're going to probably end up spending $20 anyway, because you're going to have to go back and buy more, because if you get cheap duct tape, it will not stick. It won't stick to your foam. It won't stick to your saran wrap. It'll start peeling up, and it's going to be so frustrating. It's going to make your patterns inaccurate. Do not cheap out on duct tape. Get the good stuff.
Interestingly enough, though, this is really interesting. So on Friday, last Friday, that actually doesn't matter because they're not going to see that. On a Friday, I went to Walmart and I was looking for tape because I need to send something off in a box. And normally I get packaging tape. The thing is, packaging tape these days sucks balls. It rarely sticks to the box. And so I found this one. It's by duct tape, but it's also a clear tape.
Does it have the fabric strips in it?
No. But what's really cool about it is it literally sticks to any surface, and it's hard to get it back off that surface. And I'm I wonder if I could use this for other purposes.
I know you can't use clear tape to pattern things because you can't see what you're doing.
True. That is so true.
But, and also it's thinner, so it's harder to cut. Duct tape has a fabric in it, so you can rip it with your hands or your teeth. Yeah. Whereas plastic clear tape, you have to use scissors every time, which takes it's time consuming. It's annoying.
True.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I just learned that because one time I ran out of duct tape in the middle of a project and I didn't feel like going out and get more, but I had clear tape and I was let me try this. Oh, I couldn't do it. It was so hard.
I bet.
All right. Then you have some various materials. Again, small materials you might not think about, but you will have to get and keep buying over time. So things like paints, saran wrap, any type of plastics for eyes, clays, markers, scissors. You'd think you'd only have to buy one pair of scissors, but they get dull real quick.
Yeah.
Sewing pins and clips. Just quilting clips alone. A pack of 30 of them, it's $15. And you need a ton of clips for a full suit. Bobbins, measuring tape, paper, brushes, X-Acto blades, and knives. There are so many little things that go into fursuit making that you won't realize until you have to go out and buy them. You'll get all your supplies and you're like, all right, I'm all set. And then you'll sit down at your desk and you'll start working and you're like, oh shit, I need this thing. I didn't realize I needed this thing. So it's a bunch of various just little knickknacks that you'll need.
Now, to be more specific, when it comes to scissors, it's better for you to get a fabric scissor than just a regular scissor, because fabric scissors tend to be a little bit more sturdier and a little bit sharper than your average scissor.
Yeah.
A fun little, you guys are going to be like, who the hell is this chick? A good way to temporarily sharpen your scissors if you're on a budget. From Martha Stewart from like 10, 15 years ago, I learned this little trick. You can actually cut aluminum foil, just cut little strips all the way down it, and that'll help sharpen it.
Huh.
Craziest thing, but it actually works. And I do it for all of our scissors in the house.
That is interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, there you go. You learned something.
I use fabric scissors for my various textiles, but I don't use scissors on fur. I use X-Acto knives on fur, but it also helps to have a little teeny tiny pair of scissors for cleaning up shaving and whatnot. Speaking of shaving, you also have machinery that you will need. The one you'll primarily will think of is a sewing machine. Now, you can hand sew everything, and there's nothing wrong with that, but if you're going to be a fursuit maker long term, you are going to need a sewing machine.
What the hell is an electric knife?
An electric knife, yeah, that's
another one. Is that one of those like where you're cutting like the turkeys or whatever?
Yeah, mine is literally an electric turkey carver. I got it at Walmart, 10 years ago for $10, and they're not expensive, but they do die quickly if you use them a lot.
So for shaping foam.
But that's if you buy like 3 to 4 inch foam and you have to cut it, you're going to need an electric knife. There's no other way to cut it. Of course, you'll need internet access and a laptop, which is a monthly expense. You'll need a workstation with electricity, which is a monthly expense. Things like rent. You'll need a hot glue gun. You cannot get super cheap hot glue guns or they will shit on you constantly and they will short out and they can actually be a fire hazard if you keep them on all the time, like fursuit makers tend to do. So you have to get a more expensive hot glue gun. You will also need dog clippers to shave fur. You might think, I can do it with scissors. No, you can't. Don't play. No, you cannot. And if you can successfully, it's going to take you a million years, and that's not effective for your business. You need dog clippers, and those can vary in price. I know there's a Schumacher brand that's only like $30 on Amazon.
Schumacher?
I don't know. I know West's Custom Creations uses them. A lot of other makers use them. And they're a new brand I just heard of that are only $30 and they work really well. But before I learned about those, I've been using a ceramic blade. God, I don't have it on me, but I forget the name brand, but it was like $90. So they can be expensive and they will crap out on you. You have to upkeep them. You have to oil them. You have to clean them out. You have to replace the blades, and blades on their own can be like $15 to $20. So that is another repeat cost. So a lot of these machines that you use for fursuit making will need not only upkeep, like oiling and cleaning and replacing parts, but they have monthly expenses too with electricity or internet. Mm-hmm. So you got to keep those monthly costs in mind too. And then finally, you have your shipping and your taxes.
I was going to say real quick, don't get material or equipment that also shorts out your house.
Yes. I have plugged in a hot glue gun before, and the electricity in my workroom just cut out. And I was like, what happened?
So weird. It's so weird.
Oh my God.
But shipping and taxes.
Mm-hmm. Shipping and taxes.
This one sucks.
This one sucks the most, honestly.
Especially now.
Mm-hmm. So shipping, you can think about it both ways. Shipping as in you shipping out the fursuit. Oftentimes, the customer is supposed to pay for shipping no matter what. Like, you don't buy something on eBay and expect the person selling to pay for shipping. The customer pays for shipping. So that's not on your expense. If you are a customer, though, then that is something you have to keep in mind. Like, if you're overseas, you'll have to pay customs and you will have to pay the shipping cost, which sometimes could be almost as expensive as the item you're buying, depending on what it is. So keep that in mind. Also, I mean, and I've had customers in the past say, like, I can't afford shipping right now. Can you hold on to my fursuit for a couple of months? And it's like, do I have a choice? Because I don't have room to hold on to your order. When you order a fursuit, you got to keep shipping costs in mind. So you're not stuck making your fursuit maker keep your things long term.
Is shipping costs up front with a fursuit price?
No, you calculate it when it's done because you have to weigh it and put it in a certain sized box. And also shipping prices can change with the date. So if I get a quote for a fursuit and I calculate general shipping and then I finish it a year later, that shipping price could very well double.
Like holiday seasons.
Yeah.
Holidays would make it go a little bit
Holidays
higher.
make it go up, so you have to wait until the order is done and ready to ship out to calculate.
Is it possible to put an estimate of what it could be? No guarantee. Like say, no guarantee, but this is what your shipping costs will most likely cost.
Yes, you can do that. And I've done that for a lot of international customers because they have to save up. So for example, I had a sock ball customer be like, hey, can you tell me, a general price of what you think shipping to Scotland would be? And so I would go on the USPS website and calculate it as if I was shipping the order out that day. I just guessed the weight of the order because I've made so many sock paws, they all have a general weight. So I guessed the order and I guessed the general box size that I most likely would use, and I got a price and I said, no guarantee, but it's going to be around this. So you can.
One last thing about shipping too that it just kind of popped in my mind that would make sense. Be aware of who you ship through, because there are certain things like FedEx. I swear to God, like every time like a product comes through FedEx, it takes like 3 weeks to get to me.
Yeah,
whereas
same.
Amazon would get it to me in like 2 days. UPS will get it to me quicker, and USPS, self-explanatory.
Yeah. So I personally use USPS because I don't have to make an account or pay money to track my order like UPS will do, which is stupid. FedEx is just shit.
It is.
And I've always used USPS. And if you use priority mail, I never use ground. And this is just a fun tip for any new fursuit makers out there, don't use ground shipping. Even if your customer asks for it to make it cheaper, tell them no, because it might get lost. It will get delayed. And then they're going to blame it on you. For some reason, customers like to blame shipping orders on you all the time, even though it's out of your hands at that point.
Yep.
So just cover your ass. Tell them, hey, just save up for the priority mail and put it in your terms of service. Say priority mail shipping only. And you can also do insurance. Insurance, you can insure a package, make your customer pay for that if they want it. Offer it. Say if you choose to not insure your package, once it's out of my hands, it is no longer my responsibility and I cannot refund you. But if you do insure your package, I will be able to refund you, because if you insure a package and USPS loses it, then they give you the money that you labeled your package as what it's worth. So you insure that package for how much their fursuit cost, so you can refund that person if it gets lost.
Good deal.
And then you have to think about the other side of shipping. Fabric supplies getting shipped to you. Fur is heavy. I can order 4 yards of fur on one website and my shipping is probably going to be $50 minimum. And that's lucky because I live in the United States. Fursuit makers who don't live in the US have it much, much worse. Hundreds and hundreds of dollars, even for just a handful of yards. So you can also keep that in mind. Shipping is rough. And then you have your taxes, and that's kind of self-explanatory. If you make enough on fursuit making, you have to file taxes, because if you make a certain amount a year, it's considered your career. So legally, you have to pay taxes. If you don't make that much with fursuit making, it's just kind of like a side hustle. You might not qualify for taxes depending, but you still have fees through things like PayPal. So when a person pays an invoice, PayPal will take some of it, and that's theirs. You won't see it. And then when you want to take that money and transfer it into your bank account, they take even more. So whatever that person is paying you, you are not going to see all of that money. PayPal is going to take a handful of it.
Yes.
Yup. That's the gist of taxes and shipping. Shipping is the main beast. Taxes are kind of self-explanatory. And if taxes seem intimidating to you, don't worry. They always are. Just research it. Ask other fursuit makers, and you'll get more information. So overall, looking at all these categories, again, this is just my version of it, and this is just my number. There are many, many different numbers, so don't take this as the only generalization. Supplies only to make a basic plantigrade full suit without any complex markings or parts will probably cost you over $600 just in supplies.
Now, I wanted to point something out real quick here. Typically with brand new fursuit makers, unless you're insanely talented, most newbies will make fursuit heads large. I don't understand why they're so big, but they're always huge. And if you want to keep this in mind here, the more material you use on your fursuit for, like, let's say a bigger fursuit head, the more it's going to cost you in the end. So think about that. When you're making your fursuit, think about how big you're going to be making it, or how small. The smaller probably costs you less. But if you're going to use a lot of real estate for just the head, keep that in mind.
Absolutely. And also keep that in mind for bodies as well. You don't want to discriminate based off of weight and height. That's just a shit move. I know the kimono fursuit maker.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, kimono fursuit makers tend to do this, but you shouldn't discriminate based off of height or weight. Anybody can fursuit, right?
Right.
But you do have to take that in consideration. So I know on my quote form, I would always ask what the height and weight of the individual is, because I don't know what your body might look like until I see your duct tape dummy. So getting your height and weight gives me me a general idea, okay, do I need a yard or two more or a yard or two less? Somebody who is only 5 foot tall and 130 pounds is going to need much less fur than somebody who is like 250 pounds, 6 foot tall, for example. So it doesn't mean that those people can or can't fursuit. Anybody can. It's everybody's right to. But it will help you figure out how much fur and foam you will need.
Yep.
Good point. Didn't even think about that.
Thanks. That's why I'm here. So the next thing you have to keep in mind is time. Okay. The time it takes to build a fursuit varies. The more complex a character, the more time it takes. Therefore, the more it will cost. A lot of people, they don't really think about that. They're just like, oh, okay, I'll just do it. And oh, it's taking a couple of weeks, so no big deal. It is a big deal.
Absolutely.
Just like how in a standard job, people need to be paid so much an hour in order to make a living wage, the same needs to go for fursuit makers. I think the most common mistake that I see is that people will price a fursuit, but they don't put anything else in there. Like they don't put the time that they spent in there. So they don't put themselves at any type of worth whatsoever or value. And so while you're making a fursuit and you sold it for $600, you didn't make any profit off of that. You just sold it for what you paid for the materials. And that's, I think, a rookie move. That's something you learn eventually. But if you're listening to this episode, don't do that. That's stupid. Value yourself at what you're worth at the time you're making your fursuit so you can make a little bit of profit off of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, people don't think about even little things that take more time. So, for example, if you are a fox character and your tail, the tip of it is white. If the tip of it is just a smooth transition from like orange to white, sewing that will probably take a fursuit maker, even if they're hand sewing, 10 minutes. But let's say it's jagged, like it's kind of like a Z pattern. You want it to not be a smooth transition. You want it to go zigzag. Then you've just took a 10 or 15 minute seam to sew and turned it into a 30 to 35 minute
or an
item
hour,
to sew.
Depending on how you do it.
Yes. So, because you have to hand sew zigzags most of the time. You cannot put that in a machine. So that infinitely takes more time. So even little things like that take more time. Therefore, it costs more money.
In your opinion, what would you value, if you don't mind answering, what would you value your time per hour on a fursuit?
So I'm not the best person to ask that because I've always been really, really bad about pricing my work per hour. Some makers will. Some will do it a different way, and I'll tell you about the 2 different ways to do it. But I've always been bad about calculating how many hours it takes me to do a project because my schedule has always been so wackadoo. And I've never thought to just sit down and have a timer and to do that math. Yeah, wackadoo. So I don't know. And it can depend on what state you live in, how much is your rent, things like that. So if you live in a more rural area and your rent is cheaper, you might be okay charging $15 an hour. Or if it's just a side hustle and it's just supporting you on the side, you might be okay with something like that. But if it's your main squeeze, like this is your job, you live in New York, you live in California, food costs $1 million, then you might have to charge $20, $25 plus an hour. It just depends. It really depends on the person. So I don't know how much I would charge myself per hour. I really don't. And I don't know how many other makers do that. If you're a fursuit maker and you have experience charging per hour, email us in and tell us how much you pay yourself per hour. I would like to know.
Or, it kind of be interesting to know, like on average, as well as how much a fursuit maker profits off of a fursuit itself.
Yeah. So, this might be a good transition on how to price your fursuit work, especially if you're a beginner.
Yeah.
So, of course, we talked about you have to calculate your material costs. That would be your initial costs, like fabric and foam, and your long-term costs, things like your electric bill, your rent, the maintenance on your machines. So you'll calculate your material costs. And then if you do it by hour, you're going to calculate an estimate on how much time it'll take you to complete that fursuit, and then multiply that by how much you want to make per hour. So you can do it that way. If you can figure, I'm going to spend perhaps a week or two on this, figure out the hours that you work every day, and then do yourself per hour, right? Like you would a standard job. There's an alternative to this. I do the alternative, and this is probably not the best way to do it, but it is easier for beginners to kind of comprehend. So what I do is I will calculate my material costs, and then I will add on a surcharge of how much I believe my labor for that project is worth. So let's say it costs me $600 to make a black and white basic planter grade wool. So that's $600 in materials. And I look at that and I'm like, okay, this will probably, it won't be a difficult fursuit to make. I won't have a lot of mental anguish. It's basic. I can get through it without too much strife. Let's say I want to charge $900 in labor. That would make my total $1,500. Now, that's really cheap for a full suit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a beginner, that might be what your number looks like. So let's say you have been making fursuits for like 15 years. Then your labor is going to be worth more. The price that you charge per labor and the price that you might charge yourself per hour will increase with your skill and your experience. So if you're an inexperienced maker, you're brand new at this, maybe you've only made like 5 or 8 fursuits before in the past, then if it costs $600 to make a fursuit, you might only charge yourself $900 for labor because that's where your skill level is at. But let's say you are an experienced maker and you have a big name brand and your wait list, you have hundreds of people wanting your work, then you might charge $2,000 for your labor, making the fursuit price $2,600. And even then, that's still considered cheap for a big name maker. So your expenses will vary. It really does depend.
Yep.
I know that's a very roundabout way to say that, but the gist of it is you can calculate per hour or you can just generalize what you think your labor is worth.
Right.
But no matter what, always make sure you charge more than what your materials cost, because even if you are a beginner, your time is worth money. Because you're still taking time to make something for somebody, even if it's a lower quality, they are still choosing to commission you and they are still choosing to put their trust in a more inexperienced maker, and that is okay. Make sure you still charge yourself labor. Don't ever just take a commission for material costs only. With all that being said, regardless if you are a professional fursuit maker or a new fursuit maker, it's always a good idea to include in your price a little bit of wiggle room if you have an unknown cost. So let's say you accidentally ordered 3 yards of fur, but you need 4. You'll have a little bit of wiggle room in order to get that extra fur that you need. Now, if you are charging a lot more for your labor, then of course your wiggle room can come from there. But if you are a newer fursuit maker, just make sure you don't undercharge so much that if you have to remake something or you didn't order enough supplies because you're new at this, eyeballing it is hard. Make sure you have that wiggle room, whether it's only $50 or whether it's $100. That should be enough for you to have that cushion.
Yep. Now, the last thing that you probably wouldn't think of as far as fursuit making goes, and this was something that I brought to Sparrow's attention a few weeks ago as well. Remember that art in general is subjective. And what that means is if we look at like art in general, like going into a gallery and you see one that has like, I don't know, one line down it, but the price for it is like $1,500 and you're like, who's going to pay for that? True. I don't understand why it's $1,500, but for whatever reason, the artist valued it at $1,500. Is it worth that much? No. But people price things because they put value of what they put into it, and they know that people are going to be willing to pay that much for art. The same goes for like art from well-known painters like Van Gogh, for instance. Van Gogh has its history on it. It has its value and worth. Are the paintings really worth several $1,000,000? Probably not. But people are willing to buy it at that price for whatever reason. And the same goes for fursuits as well. When you make a fursuit, you can say that like, whatever, you're really brand new fursuit that you've ever made, first time on the line, you could say, oh yeah, it's totally worth $1,000. But then you look at another fursuit maker who's more talented, who also has the same price for a fursuit, but you can definitely tell the quality is 100 times better. Keep in mind of that. So people will pay for quality, but there is no like actual like table to use as to how to price a fursuit. That actually has to come from you itself and how much you think someone's going to be willing to pay for your fursuit quality.
Yeah, it's definitely really subjective.
It really is.
That's what makes trying to give advice on how to price a fursuit so hard, because there's so many factors that go into it. Like, yep. I could give y'all the best advice that I can, but then at the end of the day, it's all so subjective. And that's why I think the argument on, like, why are fursuits so expensive nowadays? Why this? Why that was going on Twitter last month was so garbage, because, again, it's art. Don't get so desensitized to fursuits that you forget that it's a one-of-a-kind art piece. Also, it's a luxury item, so you don't need to own it to survive. So the argument on price is just kind of like, you can have your opinions, sure, but that doesn't mean you need to go and harass makers or harass people who support those makers saying like, you pay too much or you're charging too much. It's so subjective. Whatever someone thinks something is worth, that is up to them.
And if it works for them, great, it works for them. Don't complain about it. Go to someone else then. And if they are the person that you end up going to, don't complain about it. You chose to go to that fursuit maker who has a higher price set than anyone else. That is your choice alone, and only you are to blame for that.
Mm-hmm. The only reason someone should be complaining at instance like that is if they are not given a product in a way that is professional. Like if you get scammed or something, like you just don't get it or anything like that.
Exactly. But we hope that all of this kind of helps you if you are looking into building a fursuit and then also selling it. This kind of gives you just like the basic rundown of certain things. We hope that this helps you. And then we also hope that those of you who listen who are planning on buying a fursuit to also keep this in mind from the fursuit maker's side, so that when you go and buy something, you understand the process and why it's priced at a specific reason. You can use that as well. And always, when buying fursuit art or fursuits in general or whatever, always use the pyramid rule when thinking about something, because this will definitely either A, save you money or be less of a headache when you go to actually buy one.
Absolutely.
I think that's it, though. Do we have anything else we wanted to discuss?
I do not think so.
Okie dokie. Well, you guys know how to reach us. You can reach us by emailing us at talktothemuzzle@gmail.com. I do want to say that we are now getting emails on a regular basis.
No, that's good to hear.
Right? I just have to respond to them. I see them come in and I'm like, I'll get to it. And then I'm like, a week later, I'm like, shit.
We'll
I didn't get to it. You can find us on Twitter at From the Muzzle. And then we also have a Telegram group, which is increased in size finally. You can find all that information on every episode just down below. And then, of course, you can always message us through Telegram if you want to. Keep in mind that each of us, as hosts, or depending on what we do, we have things going on. So if we don't respond to you right away, we'll probably eventually get back to you on Telegram.
Remember that Space is a healthcare worker and I'm a teacher. So we're both having some crazy jobs during COVID right now.
Yep. Exactly. But we have other moderators in the group that periodically chat in there. So
we love them for that.
Absolutely. But yeah, I believe that's it. So
we'll see you next time.
You inhaled for a second. I'm like, you're going to say something?
Oh, I was yawning.
Oh. Well, okay. Well, then we will see you guys next time. Have a great day.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.